Yo, 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 this is Mr. Ayers bringing it to you live from the 402 area code, talking about some more Saxon math today. This is section 1, lesson 4, talking about multiplication and division word problems. Let's get rolling. First, again, we need to write down the steps to solving our multiplication and division word problems. Okay, these are going to be very similar to our last lesson where we did adding and subtracting word problems. Okay, so follow along, write things down if you need to. First step, again, is to understand. We're always going to make sure first that we understand the problem. Here's what that means when we're talking about multiplying and dividing word problems. Again, first thing is I want you to circle what you know, and then underline what you want to find out. Okay, circle the information they actually give you, underline the info they're asking you to find. Okay, next thing is how are things being grouped together? Okay, so they are going to be grouping things, either multiplying things, dividing things. Okay, things are going to be in groups. Okay, it's going to say they're going to have some groups that are that have some amount in them, and there's going to be a number of groups. Okay, so we got to figure out how they're being grouped together. Again, then we got to come up with a plan. Show up, bring your tools, have a plan. You always got to have a plan, especially in math class when you solve word problems. Okay, write a verbal model. We talked about that already. We will keep doing that. For grouping, your verbal model is going to follow this format that I give you right here. Okay, that format where you're going to have some number of groups times how many are in each group. That's going to equal your total. Okay, so I realize that's kind of weirdly worded. Okay, so again, this one right here means how many in each group. Okay, that's another way you can write that, if that makes more sense to you. Okay, means the same exact thing. Okay, then after that, again, you fill in what you know and solve the problem. So we got understand, plan, solve, and as always, check your answer to make sure your answer makes sense. Alright, let's go to our examples. So our objective for today is to solve multiplication and division word problems. So let's go to the example. Example says, in the auditorium the chairs were arranged in rows with 15 chairs in each row. If there were 360 chairs, how many rows of chairs were there? Okay, so again, first thing, understand the problem. Let's make sure we understand it. Circle what we know first. Okay, in the auditorium the chairs were arranged in rows with 15 chairs in each row. That sounds really important, and those words, each row, are really important. Okay, if there were 360 chairs, okay, we know there's 360 chairs total. Okay, and then we want to know how many rows of chairs were there. Alright, so again, we are going to have, our format is some number of groups times the number in each group equals our total. Alright, now we've understood the problem. We need to go to the plan section. Okay, we need to write a verbal model. Now this verbal model right here that I just wrote is just standard for all these problems. I want you to write one that applies to the problem itself. Okay, so instead of number of groups, we could say rows of chairs. Okay, because that's what our groups are. We're grouping rows of chairs. Okay, times the number of chairs in each row has to equal our total chairs. So again, we thought about what are our groups? Well, our groups are in rows, and then the number in each group is how many chairs are in each row. That equals our total chairs. Okay, now we're going to slide this up a little bit so we got room to work. Now we got to fill in the stuff that we know in place of these words I just wrote. So instead of rows of chairs, okay, I got to look for, do I know what the rows of chairs are? Well, I know there's 15 chairs in each row. I know there's 360 chairs, and then it says how many rows of chairs, so I don't know that. So I'm going to put a variable. Times number of chairs in each row. They told me that. That's 15. and that has to equal my total chairs. We know that. That's 360. Okay? So now to solve this can get a little tricky sometimes. Okay? If I knew the number of rows of chairs, and I knew the chairs in each row, I could just multiply those together. Okay? But I don't know this value. Okay? But I do know the total. Whenever you know the total, okay, if you know this number over here, what you have, you're going to divide to solve this problem. Okay, you're going to take that total and divide it by the other number you have. So I'm going to take 360 and divide it by 15 to get my answer. I'm taking my total that I know and dividing it by the other number I was given. Okay, well 15 doesn't go into 3, but it does go into 36 2 times, and 15 times 2 is 30. If I subtract these, okay, 15, how many times does that go into 60? Well, if I count by 15s, 15 times 1 is 15, 15 times 2 is 30, 15 times 3 is 45, and 15 times 4 is 60. Okay? And I get 0 there. Okay? So I got an answer right here of 24. Okay? Well, I got to answer the question. It says, how many rows of chairs were there? So I got to say there were 24 rows of chairs. I got to take the number I got and answer the question with it. Okay, again, box or circle your answer. Okay, we've understood, we've planned, we've solved, now we got to check. Okay, to check this, we're going to take my answer I got, 24, and multiply it by 15. And see if I get this right here for an answer. Well, 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2. 2 times 5 is 10. Plus 2 is 12. Now I'm going through this fast because we should know how to multiply. 4 times 1 is 4. 2 times 1 is 2. And I add these up and I get 0, 6, and 3. 360. So my answer right here, 24 rows of chairs, is good. Alright, let's go down or to the next example. Okay, let's talk about Corey now. It says, Corey sorted 375 quarters into groups of 40 so that he could put them into rolls. So maybe he's working at the bank and he's got to put the quarters into rolls. How many rolls can Corey fill with the quarters he has? Okay, and explain why your answer is reasonable. We'll worry about this part, the explain at the end. Okay, again, let's understand the problem. Let's make sure we know what we're doing. Okay, circle what we know. We know Corey sorted 375 quarters into groups. Okay. We know that he sorted them into groups of 40. Okay, because that's how many quarters have to go into a roll. We want to know how many rolls can he fill with the quarters. Okay, so again, we're taking on this format. We've got a number of groups times a number in each group equals our total. Okay, we need to write a verbal model by that format. So instead of number of groups, we need to think about what kind of groups do we have here. Okay, well, we're grouping into rolls of quarters. So I'm going to have the number of rolls times, instead of the number in each, this is how many quarters in each roll. So quarters in each. Okay, and that's going to equal our total. In this case, our total quarters. Alright, so we're going to bump this up a little bit here. Let's take what we know and plug it in. Number of rolls. Okay, well, that's what's underlined. It says how many rolls. So instead of that, we're going to put a variable. We'll use x this time around. Times quarters in each roll. Well, they told us that. They said they're groups of 40. Okay, so I got 40 quarters in each roll. That's going to equal my total quarters, which is 375. Okay? Let's slide this over a little bit again so we can see what we're doing. Now, once again, I know the total. Okay? When I know the total in these problems, that tells me I'm going to divide. Okay? I'm going to take my total, 375, and I'm going to divide it by the other number I had, in this case 40. Alright? Well, 40 doesn't go into 3, and it doesn't go into 37, but it does go into 375. Okay? We got to kind of use our good number sense to figure out how many times. I like to start with like 5s or 10s. Okay, so I'm going to ask myself, will 40 go into this 375? Will it go in 10 times? Well, 40 times 10 is 400, so that's too many. Okay, but it's close, kind of close to 375. So we got to go another number down. So I'm going to try 9. Okay, 40 times 9. 9 times 0 is 0. Sorry about that. And 9 times 4 is 36. So I subtract and I get 15. Okay, so that means it went in there. Well, I'm going to keep dividing. Okay, so I get a decimal point. I put my 0 here, bring it down. 40 goes into 153 times. Okay, and I'm doing this quick because, again, I believe you guys can do the division because we're getting good at that. Okay, 3 times 40 is 120. I subtract, and I'm going to get 30. I'm going to bring down another 0. And 40 goes into 300 7 times. And 7 times 40 is 280. Okay, and I got to give myself a little more room here, maybe. Okay, and I'm going to subtract and get 20. Bring down another 0. And 40 goes into 205 times. Okay, so here's my answer right here. 9.375. Okay, let's look at that in the context of our problem. 9.375. My question says, how many rolls can Corey fill with quarters? And then explain why your answer is reasonable. Well, I've got an answer that's not a number I can use for a number of rolls. I can't have 9.375 rolls of quarters. I could have 1 roll of quarters or 2 roll of quarters, but I can't have 3.43 rolls of quarters. So it's got to be a whole number. Okay, so I got to ask myself, is it going to be 9 rolls of quarters or is it going to be 10 rolls of quarters? Because my answer's in between there. Well, we've told you at the beginning that if I do 10 rolls of quarters, that has to be 400 quarters total. Okay, we don't have that many. So it's not 10 rolls of quarters. It's got to be 9 rolls of quarters. So we're going to say he can fill 9 rolls. Okay, and we're not done because it tells us to explain our answer is reasonable. So why it's reasonable, because we got to have another part here. Okay, now I'm realizing as I went through this, I forgot to check our answer. That's okay for this one. We'll skip it for now, but make sure you check your answers. Okay, why is our answer reasonable? Well, again, we can't have 9.375 rolls of quarters. Okay, so we either have to have 9 or 10 rolls of quarters. So I'm just going to say that our answer is reasonable because he doesn't have enough to fill 10 rolls. So he can only fill 9. And he'll just have to have some left over that don't go in a roll. Okay? But that's why our answer is reasonable. We got a decimal answer and we can't have a decimal answer. We know he can't fill 10 rolls completely, so he can only fill 9. Okay? Those are your examples for today. Best of luck on your homework. Wish you well. Ask me any questions if you got them. Peace out.